getting beat up along the way, right? I don't really know where the cans came from. You guys could maybe tell me that later on. But that's how missionary kid care used to be. Let's cheer on the mom and dad.
Like they're the cans?
They're the cans.
Gotcha.
Let's cheer on the mom and dad. You're going to do awesome things for the kingdom. Kids are resilient. But they're resilient to a point. They need help and encouragement along the way. So a long time ago, it was like the mission at all costs. And a lot of missionary kids started walking away from the faith. A lot of missionary kids had a lot of issues, a lot of hurt. They were sent completely off to boarding schools. Now, I'm not saying that's inherently wrong, because we do have some boarding schools that are really amazing right now. But it was like, hey, you do the mission, and the kids will just figure it out. And praise God, in the last, I would say, almost 10, 15 years, there's been a huge pendulum shift here, where it's not just, let's cheer on the mom and dad, but we want to come alongside and support these kids through this journey. So I was in Alaska. For our job, we get to travel to some pretty awesome places, and I highly recommend. Anybody been to Alaska in here? Anybody? You got to go. It's like absolutely beautiful. And if you want to go visit a mission site, we have friends there, so we can hook you up. But I was walking down on a pier in Homer, Alaska, and there was this life jacket right next to the pier. And on the back of the life jacket, it said, "Kids don't float." And I thought, yeah, they don't. They need a support system to go on the boat and have a float. And so we at Global Outreach, we're the kids support system. So we're trying to figure out different things. So that's the history. This is where we are going. And now I want to tell you a little story. And may I use you in my story? No, you're on the spot right now, Julia. It's not an embarrassing story. I promise. So we went back to Ecuador for the first time this summer, and John and I got to facilitate a missionary kid and family camp. So we got to minister to the mom and dads. Oh yeah, Juliet would like to know that she was born there in Ecuador. So she has dual citizenship. Pretty cool. If you want to hear about the birth, I have a podcast where I tell a little bit about that. And some of you listened to it. It was pretty wild. Well, we're here today. We made it. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So we got to do this family camp, you guys, and it was so awesome to empower parents with tools to be able to talk to their kids and have these conversations. And I got to meet this little girl and her family, and this was the first time in her missionary kid life that she got to meet other missionary kids. The first time. And she was so elated that she met other kids that understood her, that got her life, and all of a sudden she felt like the Lord had been answering prayer. She had a friend. And I asked Josh if I'd have technology in here, and he said no. I said, okay, that's okay. I really like pictures. He's like, sorry, you're not going to have pictures here. I said, okay. So I did print off some photos to show you of this little girl. But one of the beautiful things is we were able to cultivate opportunities for her to process and lament, but also have the gratitude. And she got to make friends with a little girl, Juliet, my daughter, who is there, and play and laugh and talk. But the really neat thing is you guys didn't even know that you were a part of that story, this church. These kids, their lives are filled with coming and going, and they don't always have an anchor to remember. And kids don't, if they're younger, probably don't have social media to look back on or a phone to look at photos. And 2 years ago, Josh asked me, he's like, hey, our church wants to do something to help for this retreat. What do you need? Do you need supplies? And I said, you know what I've been wanting for a really long time? Is I have been wanting a digital printer where I can print photos off at these retreats, and I can actually give the kids a photo to take home with them. That this is a reminder, the Lord sees you, the Lord cares about you. He cares about these little tiny prayers that you guys say and the huge ones and these heart desires. And this little girl's prayers were answered. She was praying that God would provide a friend her exact age, and he did at that retreat. And so I did bring for you guys today this, her mom sent me this picture. So they got to decorate picture frames, and I'll have them up here so you guys, because it's kind of weird to show them up this way. But she got to decorate a picture frame and put her and Juliet in there. And that's just a really cool Ebenezer for the Lord, for her to remember his faithfulness.
No, that's a bad picture.
It's not a bad picture. It's very cute. So, in the past 2 years, you guys, that little printer has traveled with me. It's been to 5 different countries. It has touched, I wrote down all the different kids. It has touched kids who have traveled to me and then back again to Uganda, Ethiopia, Ecuador, Kenya, Egypt, Liberia, Costa Rica, Alaska, the Netherlands, the USA, Madagascar, and Spain. That little tiny printer has made a huge gospel impact on these kids. Like, it's so important for the church to be a part of this and be involved. And you guys, I tried for a really long time in the Tupelo community to get connected and get people to buy in that, like, we don't want any more kids walking away from Jesus. There is no point to sending out missionaries if their children decide, I don't want to follow Jesus because of this decision. And we have a job as the church, like the bigger body of believers, to come alongside these people who are called out, who are called to a different life, and be the ones that hold the anchor for them. And you guys are doing that, whether you knew it or not, which is pretty amazing. So, I have a couple of opportunities. You're probably wondering, well, how else can we help, right? I gave you the why. The how else is, how many of you have ever had a missionary kid come to visit here at this church? Have you guys had that before? Or your home? Ever had that?
Hey, Julia.
Oh, Juju's here, yeah. Okay, you've met missionary kids. One of the hardest questions that missionary kids get, and it's probably one of the simplest, is if you ask them, where's home? A lot of missionary kids will look at you like, do I say, like, my birth home? Do I say the home I spent the first... like, all of a sudden you can actually see their brain calculating through and being like, I don't know how to answer that question. And it puts this, like, undue stress on them. So another way you guys can minister to missionary kids is, hey, tell me about where you live. It's like the same question. It's just asked in a very different way. And giving them the space to process this unusual life that the Lord has called their parents into, but he's chosen for them to be a part of it. And now I have some pretty awesome opportunities for you guys coming up. We are going to go to Turkey next September 2025. And we have these retreats where we gather all these missionary kids together and their parents. And we have the parents attend their own kind of like camp, situation where they can get to go and be rejuvenated and restored. But then we do that for the kids too. And Heather got to come last week and be a part of our missionary training that we did. But it's like that, but we take it a next step deeper. And we talk about the hard things that missionary kids have, but the blessings as well. And we get to help usher them into, hopefully, a deeper walk with the Lord. So we're looking for volunteers, people who are adults who deeply love children, who love to connect, who want to be those extended aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas. I'm not going to decide age-wise here, that qualification, but people who want to minister and be the hands and feet of Jesus to these kids at this retreat. Lauren and Josh got to go. Josh opted not to help with the kids. I don't know why. But Lauren did, and it was a gift for her to be able to connect and love on and encourage these kids in this season. And we have kids baby through 18 that come to these retreats. So we have a wide variety of ages. Another way that we can have you guys partner with us is... we are always looking for prayer partners. So today I brought a deck of cards of our missionary kids and a tutorial on how to pray for them, what are the biggest prayer requests and the needs that they have. And I would love for you guys to take a card or two. There are 277 missionary kids at Global Outreach. So they are set by family cards, and that's roughly, I don't know, 115 families, maybe. Sometimes missionary kids have large families. So prayer, coming to Turkey. We're going to get to partner with your youth group pretty soon to be able to package college care packages for young adults. So picture yourself as like a young 18-year-old, and you totally leave home, but your parents are not just a couple hours away, they're a couple flights and days away from you. It can be really isolating. And I love 2 times a year to send these care packages. Some of them aren't in college, some are in the workforce, some are in the military, but we like to send them goodies. Like, I mean, how many of you like to get candy or a nice card in the mail? Better than like junk mail, right? And so we want to send them goodies with notes of encouragement and prayer, especially as they're approaching the holiday season. And some might be like with extended family or not with their immediate family nearby. And then the 4th way that I would love to ask you guys to partner with us is these retreats, we try to make them economical, but sometimes we're looking for scholarship opportunities for families who have a more difficult time. So if any of those things interest you, prayer, going to Turkey, college care packages, or scholarshiping a family to go to Turkey, I would love to talk with you afterwards. But I want to tell you one last story, and I might be talking faster, but I would love for you to ask me some questions. You're not in this one, no. Sorry. But I could think of probably many stories. I just don't know if you want me to tell them here tonight. Yeah. So we had a retreat a couple years ago in Spain. And we did our same kind of programming. And at the end of each of these retreats, I like to have a time of prayer over the kids, specifically, where all the adults come around. And we had this time of prayer, and each of our team members wrote a prayer that we felt like the Lord was leading us for each individual kid. To just like really honor them and honor their parents and let their parents see that like we see them, we care for them. So we prayed around each kid and we like laid hands on them. And then all of a sudden this mom starts just crying. I mean, and it's an emotional time, but she's crying and she's crying. And she's actually Spanish by birth. So she speaks Spanish, and her husband is actually from the Netherlands, so he speaks Dutch. But she asked him to translate into English for us what her heart language was. And she had said she had felt forgotten by the church. And her biggest worry and her biggest concern was her kids. Was she messing them up because of this life that they chose? Which I don't know, if you're a parent in here, I'm sure you've had that feeling before. Like, am I doing the right thing? And she said this retreat was one of the most redeeming experiences because a church came to serve her kids. A church came to love on her kids and showed her that they are important to the Lord. And so these retreats are super fun. We go to exotic places, but that's not the main point. The main point is that these kids and their families are seen by the Lord and ultimately continue to walk in a thriving life with Jesus. And so I'm going to read from you. Lauren is representing our theme of our missionary kid program is rooted. Just a second. Okay. And if you guys want to look in Ephesians 3, if you have a Bible, if not, that's okay. I'm going to read Ephesians 3:14. And when I was praying about how do we start a missionary kid program with kids of all ages, and I'm an educator by trade, so usually you get a curriculum, you get objectives, you get a rubric. Well, there's not that. And 8 years ago at Global, there was no missionary kid program, and so I was like, okay, I'm praying, I'm fasting. God, what do you want me to do? How do we even start to care for these kids when there's so many ages, so many different backgrounds? And this is what he led me to. For this reason, I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in the inner man, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know that the love of Christ, which surpasses all knowledge, that you may be filled up to all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly, beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us, to him be the glory in the church in Christ Jesus to all the generations, forever and ever. Amen. And I was like, man, wouldn't that be a beautiful sight? If these kids were walking around totally filled up by the Lord because of our pouring into them. Because guess what? If we're blessed to be a blessing so that other kids will know Jesus, that will just keep reproducing. And the end goal is that the nations will know. If we have thriving families and thriving kids, we're going to have more places reached among the world for Christ. And that gets me excited. When I have to answer emails or do stinking Excel that I don't understand. And Josh does, and he gives me a really hard time about it. I come back to this. The whole main point, the whole main reason is so that the nations will know Christ. And I just want to invite you and to partner in that. Because I think God is really up to something. He's doing something bigger. He's bringing more people to Global than he's ever brought before. We had 22 adults and 14 kids 2 weeks ago. And usually we had maybe 6 kids, 10 adults. It's just getting bigger and bigger each time. And we want to invite you to be a part of that journey with us. So, what questions do you have for me about missionary kids?
If you wouldn't mind kind of explaining what a third culture kid is. You've done a good job of it already.
Yeah.
Just kind of succinctly.
If I had a really beautiful whiteboard right here, you're going to have to imagine pictures.
There's one
pictures.
over there if you want to go get it.
No, that's okay. Okay, picture we're all born a circle, okay? So I was born in Elgin, Illinois. That is my birthplace. If you don't hear, I don't have a southern, what'd you say?
John Deere.
Yeah, thank you. My people, fields of corn. That's where we're from. Okay, so I'm born a circle in Elgin, Illinois. Well, let's say my parents decided they wanted to go into the mission field. So this circle decides I'm going to pick Nice, France, because it's my favorite place in the entire world. Okay, so my parents are going to take me, this circle, and they're going to try to plug me into Nice, France. Well, I'm not quite, this Francophile type beautiful person, but I have this Chicago accent that's really hard to get the French accent going on. But we spend years and years and years, and my circle is bumping around with the other cultures, and then all of a sudden I start to become this square where I'm learning the language, especially because I moved there when I'm young. So all of a sudden my Chicago accent's gone, and I sound like legit French, and everybody's like, "Wow, she's amazing." They're probably not saying that. But I'm living here. I can, I'm Caucasian, and maybe I can fit in with some of these people here that are in France. I look a little bit like them. I mean, there's lots of different ethnicities that are in France, but I could blend in a little bit, okay? But I'm not quite from Nice, France. Spent a lot of my life there, know the language really well, know the culture, know where to go buy my baguette, and all that kind of stuff, okay? But I'm still a square. My circle got transformed into a square. And because of all that bumping around, that sanctification, all that kind of stuff. Well, then my parents decide, the Lord's calling us home. We're going to actually move back to Elgin, Illinois, and you're going to go to high school there. Well, I don't look like my circle from where I left. I definitely I'm not my square anymore, because I'm trying to fit into this American Western culture. I'm trying to speak like a Yankee, all these different things. And I'm all bumping around again, and I become this triangle where I have a passport country, USA, but I have a life that was rich and full, and I was totally enculturated in France. But now I'm back here again, and I don't feel like I fit in either place anymore. I've become this third culture kid. The really cool thing, though, is sometimes these kids can feel really isolated, like they don't belong at all. But when they meet other kids who've had that similar experience, it's almost like they have these spidey senses, and they can connect and find each other almost instantly. I've seen it across rooms. I've seen kids just get it. And you know what? They're able to go deep really fast because they don't know how long they get to be together. It's pretty wild. But that would be what a third culture kid is. Now, I will tell you, global, we have some really complicated familial structures because we'll have, like I told you, the Spanish couple and the Dutch. So Spanish, he's Dutch. They actually got married and moved to Ohio. Which you're like, why? But they wanted to go further study, so they were going to seminary in Ohio. They had all three of their kids in Ohio. Their kids were as American as you can imagine. And then they moved back to Spain. So, yeah, that's how they felt. So they're like this, not even just a third culture, because mom and dad are from two different countries. They have American, but they're now in Spain, and they had never lived there before. We have families who have adopted kids who are Ugandan, but dad's from Canada and mom's from Michigan. So this third culture is kind of a misnomer. It's not really just one third culture. It's like this other culture that understands each other. So thank you, though. Good question. Would you like a candy?
I want a t-shirt.
Oh, t-shirt. What size do you wear?
Double X.
You're going to have to do, I'm going to have to send it back with small. I'm going to have to send it with, you just say right here, with Josh. I got a large. What size does your wife wear? She probably, medium? Oh, I was going to say small. We do have a medium. You can give her this one. Yeah.
Thank you, sweetie.
Any other questions? Okay, that might be genetic. Yeah.
Do most of the kids go to boarding schools?
No, we have a whole variety, and technology has opened up a whole new world. But we have a mixture of kids that go to public school, that go to international schools, that go to Christian schools, that do homeschool, that do online school. So it really depends on the region that they serve. I would say a lot of our European kids can go to school fairly easily. Most of the time it's even public school because they're pretty good there. I would say in Africa, we do have kids that go to boarding school if their parents serve in more remote areas. A lot of times their kids don't go, though, until high school. So a lot of the boarding schools try to discourage that unless parents are living in more of a war-torn area. Sometimes they begin in middle school, but there's a really amazing one in Kenya called Rift Valley Academy. There's another one that's in Quito, Ecuador, called Alliance Academy. There's several around the globe. Another one in Germany that's in the Black Hills, and it's called, or Black Forest, so it's called Black Forest Academy. But a lot of times they're beginning in maybe middle school to high school, and it's just for various reasons, usually for safety issues, and also if they've been homeschooled for a long time in more of a remote area to help prepare them for college. So that's a really good question, though. I'm trying to think if I have anybody in boarding school right now. I think I have two at Black Forest Academy right now, the Alexanders. Yes?
Boarding school sometimes used as punishment?
That is actually a very good question, because I think in movies they get a really bad rap, right? Like boarding schools or military schools get a bad rap, but no, it's usually as like an opportunity for kids to have friends, play sports, do arts. Now, if you went to go visit Rift Valley Academy, it looks like this magical, like kind of almost like a Disney castle. I mean, it's beautiful. They have like all these beautiful dorms, and the kids live in actually houses with dorm, like house parents. So if they're younger, they live in like a normal, it looks like there's a kitchen, there's a living room, there's an upstairs, and they keep it to 6 or less kids that live there. So it's pretty cool, and there's parents that are raising support to be able to go minister to missionary kids and be the house parents. When they get into high school, they live more of like a college dorm style, but they still have a set of parents. They're not their biological parents, but they're there to support, encourage, help study. But that's a really good question. Yeah. Most kids who've gone to boarding school in the last decade have really gone by their choice and have really liked it. I would say in the past history, kids were sent as early as kindergarten, like in the 50s and 60s, and thus a lot of the cans behind the car. Can you wait just a second?
So as far as the volunteering for Turkey, like how long will you guys be going over there?
That's a great question. You can give him a candy. We are going to be going September The retreat itself is the 10th through the 15th. So it's 4 days of programming and then 1 day of tourism. I typically go 2 or 3 days earlier, 2 days earlier than the retreat to travel, get accustomed to the location that we're going to be at, especially because we don't ever know exactly where the kids are going to be. And if you've worked with kids, they require a lot of things. I guess they don't require it, but to have a fun time, you need a lot of supplies. And so I like to get my groundwork and then make friends so they can help me get into my room earlier if I need it, or different things like that. So I probably will end up leaving like Sunday, September 7th, and coming back around the 18th. Because there's actually 2 days, optional days of tourism of Ephesus. And it'll be a guided tour with a Christian touring company. So it's pretty cool. I'm looking this time around, I think, between 6 to 8 volunteers. It is always tricky because I don't ever know exactly who's coming to anything I do. So if you're a teacher, you're kind of like, you get your roster, and I don't ever know. So I've learned to be like, okay, we're just going to go with the flow. So right now I'm saying 6 to 8 people. I would not do probably over 8, though. Yeah. Because if there's a baby that ends up coming, I want that baby to have like 2 adults, because sometimes they cry a lot. You know, they're not used to being away from mom and dad ever. And so, like, people need to take turns and have breaks. I don't want to scare you away or anything, but...
Do the families not have to sign up by a certain deadline?
They do. I'm giving you advanced, knowledge. We are releasing the registration, I hope, next week, the 1st of November. That's in 2 days, but the first full week in November. And they will have until April to sign up. So it's a long, because they need to fundraise a lot of the time to raise that support to be able to go. And so that's when it closes the registration. And Heather's in charge of that group. Yeah.
These periodic mission outreach programs that you have here, are they just for global outreach, or if there happens to be a missionary in wherever the area is, do they attend also?
The retreats that we offer are typically only for global outreach missionaries, because Josh can tell you this, in order for it to be a ministry expense, it has to be some type of, our organization having a business meeting by tax law. So it's only global outreach people that we invite. Now, we don't do it. It's mostly about rest and rejuvenation and pouring into them, but there is some state of the affairs and just kind of updates what's happening on global outreach. So it is just for global missionaries. Now, we've had some missionaries travel with a family member or a friend, but the friend doesn't attend the sessions, just is at the resort with them.
I asked because you had mentioned Uganda, and we know some other missionaries that have been or still are.
Yeah, well, if they need an organization, you should tell them about global outreach, too, because we're pretty special. I am biased, but we do a couple other opportunities that for your church to get involved in, and John, my husband, has come to speak before, too, and Jason, is they offer these discernment trips. If you're like, I'm really curious, what is it even like to be a missionary or live on the field? Or what do ministries look like up close and personal? And how can I support, be a part of it? Or is God calling me to go? So we're calling them vision trips. You're not committing to anything I have to go after this. But it's an eye-opening experience. That would have been really great for me going to the mission field. I just kind of went in totally crazy and blind to a lot of the things I've done in my life. But God has been good. Amen to that. But these trips we're offering next year to Ecuador, to Jordan, to Kenya, I believe. Is there another one? And Europe. Yep. Romania and France. So if you're one of those countries really interests me, I'm curious what the Lord's stirring up in there, I would love for you to get in contact with me, and I can connect you to the people who are leading that. And the really neat thing about those trips is they're led by people who typically have had a lot of experience in that country, know the language, or have lived there themselves. So my husband John leads the Ecuador trip, and he's fluent in Spanish. Jason, my boss, is fluent in Arabic, and he leads the Jordan trip. One of my coworkers, Laura, has been to Romania on many different like short-term trips. She's taken the Romania and France trip. So you have a good guide who helps process and debrief the whole experience with you.
Do you have, am I remembering right, do you have to be 18 to go on those trips?
Not on the discernment trips.
No.
No. Mm-mm. They actually took a family, and the youngest one was 5 this last time. You only have to be 18 in order to work with our missionary kids. Yeah. Yeah. So like a retreat, you would have to be 18 or older to be able to work and minister to the missionary kids. But those discernment trips are open to any age, any people group too. And we have a lot of internship opportunities for young adults, college kids, at various sites.
How long on average are families in a particular country before they do have children?
Global's a little different in that we don't require a certain amount of term. Like the IMB has different terms, and they like ask them to move on. So we've had some in the same place for 30 years, which is amazing. We've had, I would say, the average stay or like duration of a missionary family is probably 7 years. That's about average attrition rates. Typically, if it's shorter, 2 years, it's the commitment that they've made to just be there 2 years and then come home. Maybe they're serving as like a teacher for a couple of years and they're coming back. People who are doing church planning, that's a lot longer. I mean, it's going to take you a ton of time to really get to know the culture, the language, sustainability and farming and community development projects take a really long time too. So I would say 7 years is the average probably, but we have extremes on that other end too. So 15, 20, 30 years. Yeah.
Do y'all also like a pen pal program with the kids?
Heather and I are talking about that. One of the unfortunate things of international mail is it's horrible. And so we're trying to talk through what could a digital pen pal program look like, and how could we be really good stewards of making sure that like the pen pal and the receiver both commit to like, hey, we're going to do this for 1 year, and we're going to like make sure that we write a minimum of this many like probably digital letters. Because I mean, when we lived in Ecuador, I got a package that my grandma sent in October, and I received it in March of the following year. So it's just, and it's pretty corrupt. So packages are never really a good idea to send internationally. The taxes on them are ridiculous. It's almost as much as what you're sending over there is they have to pay to get it out of customs. So I need to think on that because I think it's a great idea. I just don't know how to, there's probably some digital app where you could have pen pal app. I bet there is. But I want to work on that. So
My friends that were in Ethiopia, their packages always got opened.
Oh yeah, half the stuff was missing when I got it, and some of it was eaten. Yeah. Like we had a gingerbread house, and all the candy was gone, but the cookies were there in it. I was like, okay, well that's sad, and I don't want that anymore. It's kind of gross. So it's just very unpredictable international mail. Although my mail from Memphis is sometimes that way too. So.
So, at a retreat, like specifically, what do you do with the kids? Like, what do they do? However many days they're there? I know some of them
Yes.
but outside of the schooling days.
Yeah, that's a great. So our retreat this time is 4 days. Programming that we offer for the kids is from about, I would say, 9 until 12:30 each day. We will start worship with the entire like missionary population, and then we will separate into adults and kids for the remaining time. During that time, the best way I can describe it to you would probably be like vacation Bible school. So we have games, we have a craft, we have a lesson, but all of the curriculum is curriculum that I've written based on the life of a third culture kid. And so it's to do like bringing scripture into what's it like to say goodbye? Like how many, and I mean, some of these stories are heartbreaking. I don't even know if I want to invest anymore in my friends because I just know they're leaving the next year. And so we're trying to deal with those topics of like Yes, that's hard, and the Lord is still calling you to make friendships and build community. And so we have typically like a whole group goofy time. Then we break into small group discussion times for those lessons because they're able to process with one another, hear other kids' stories, and really when someone says something that you've been worried about and you're like, oh, they're worried too, it normalizes it. And you're like, oh, I'm not so strange, right? Like they're feeling it too. And then we have a whole group time back together where we do an art or a craft activity that goes with the lesson that we've taught. Then you're probably like, what do I do the rest of the day? Well, the really beautiful thing is you get to eat lunch with the missionaries, like try to build relationships with different people, because even though it's taking place in Turkey, we're having missionaries that come from all over the globe. So they're coming from different parts of Africa, Latin America, Europe, are all coming to one location, which is really cool. We have a lot of national missionaries. That means that they are born in the country in which they serve. So we have a beautiful couple named Sem and Eunice who are Chad by birth. They speak French. And if you guys meet them, you will be like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to see a little glimpse of heaven on earth. They're in their, I think Sem's 80, and they're still ministering to a really war-torn country. And they just exude joy. I'm like, I've never seen them unhappy. They're just lovely people. So you have lunch with them. Then in the afternoons, because it's a retreat, we want to have fun. So we usually take the kids to the pool, or we do some kind of activity. We've had other places that have water slides. It's pretty fun. So we're just like the supervision so that parents can either have one-on-ones. Maybe parents need to take a nap. Maybe the parents do want to join us too. A lot of times these parents haven't had a date or time by themselves in years sometimes. John and I didn't have a date for 1 year, the first year we lived on the mission field. I was with my older daughter, Samantha, 24/7. It's very hard. Just a second. Okay.
So what's the earliest you can start training to become a missionary?
That's a great question. I think as early as you want to. I think there's a ton of really cool opportunities. We do offer internships in our home office too in the summer, where you can help out with missionary training and get to see and hear missionary stories. You can help out with the programming that we're doing in the office there. Get to come to staff devotions and hear about that. So I'd say the earlier the better. Yeah.
You don't have to be 18 to do internships.
Not in the home office. No. It's just when we cross international lines and there's a lot less structure involved. Yeah. Because I'm the direct supervisor of, if you're working with missionary kids, then I'm there. I can't supervise the whole retreat people. So, yeah.
Heather's going to Turkey in September if any of you are interested in that. So,
I've already been talking.
She's got it covered. She told me. Well, the really neat thing is, you guys, I've been solo for a really long time in the missionary kid department. And it weighs on me. I'm 277 kids. How do you care for 277 kids when you're one person? And I prayed for years that the Lord would provide people that care about what I care about and see the value in ministering to these kids. And just in the last year, he is just bringing people without me even trying. I mean, I've begged, I've pleaded for people to come and help. And it has been one of the most beautiful things. And Heather coming to our missionary training and just taking the afternoon sessions and playing with the kids and loving on them and encouraging them was such a gift and an answer to prayer. And the fact that you guys wanted me to come to your church, maybe some of you didn't even know I was coming. That's okay. I feel loved. And I really do feel like the Lord he sees these kids that are precious to him. And he cares about them. And it's not just me being this squeaky wheel who's saying, what about the kids? What about the kids? He's way ahead of me in this. So I just want to thank you for that.
So I got another question.
Please.
You said twice a year you can get care packages.
Yeah.
Was that all kids or is that certain age kids?
I typically give them to our young adult kids because I have they're away from parents and I have direct communication with them, so I can get all they're stateside, so we can actually mail them something that they'll get. So currently we have 29 young adults that are in the States without their parents right now.
So I was just thinking about the other ones, but you said you probably wouldn't want to ship anything, or...
I did tell Heather Amazon gift cards are usually my go-to. So we do a couple different initiatives each year where we, in January, celebrate any baby that has been born. And so I write a prayer of blessing, I put their photos, and we share it like with the whole global outreach community, and then I mail their parents a digital Amazon gift card. Because most countries, you can at least purchase an online book or movie, or they can send a gift, buy something, and send it with someone who's visiting. We celebrate seniors upon graduation, again with a gift card. And we have another initiative that we do each fall where it's for the older kids. And I've had a lot of that because I was trying to triage, and I thought the older kids were the highest risk for walking away from the faith. So now, as I've built these programs, I would like to scale down younger, especially to the elementary and middle school age groups, doing some online engagement. But the last 2 years, because John and I, we raise support individually for the Missionary Kid program, our donors have been incredibly faithful. And so last year we were able to give $500 away to 24 different kids to go home for the holidays. And the way we did that is we asked them to write a letter in to describe what home means to them. And it wasn't a contest. They just they automatically got the $500 if they did that. And it was so successful, I was like, I want to do it again this year. So I wrote a different prompt. What are the gifts or the lessons learned from this experience you've had that you want to share with others? And we had 29 kids participate this year. And that's thousands of dollars that we've been able to just give away. And many parents are like, we didn't know if we were going to be able to get them home for the holidays. We couldn't make our budget this month. And this allows them to come home. And then for some kids, it's the first time they've ever gotten to go back where they grew up. So like my example of like the Paris to Chicago and back in Chicago again, some of my kids' parents have moved back to the States, but they've never been able to return to the place they call home. And so this $500, I have one kid who's saved up last year's and this year's, and he's going back this spring for the first time. So, and that's the Lord. Like Global Outreach doesn't have that in the budget to give away thousands of dollars, but donors did. And so it's pretty cool. But I want to keep growing it down now to the younger ages.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have up here, teachers, you got to come prepared for any and all circumstances, but I have these